So the pivotal lightweight showdown between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor is finally moving into some promising territory. For a while now, I have felt like this was the right move for these two guys and the divisional title picture. That said, I would have been happy seeing Tony Ferguson in the mix as well, but alas, that's just not how this cookie crumbled. At the time of this video's creation, it hadn't been signed just yet, but it's pretty clear that both Conor and Dustin are interested in making this bout a reality. The UFC, of course, would no doubt love the idea of beginning their 2021 with a fight featuring their biggest star, but let's control our expectations for now. Poirier recently did an interesting interview with ESPN's Ariel Helwani, in which he revealed that the UFC had not yet made him an offer. He put this down to the more complex negotiations that would need to be finalized with McGregor beforehand, which, to be honest, makes sense to me. What does worry me, however, in terms of being a fan of this fight, is the growing sense that there is a power struggle happening here between the UFC and Conor McGregor that is causing a lot of the recent fight speculation. Don't get me wrong, with a gun to my head I'll tell you that Poirier-McGregor 2 happens in January. But when you start to read the patterns in Conor's behaviour, the bizarre Diego Sanchez chatter, placing Manny Pacquiao as next in line, fighting Dustin in an exhibition charity matchup in Ireland, I think it says a lot about the current state of his relationship with Dana White. If I had to guess, I'd say that all of this, the leaked texts, the Sanchez and Pacquiao fights, the social media posts, it's all just evidence of a petty power struggle. And when I say petty, I'm referring to both sides here. Every time Dana tries to rein Conor in, Conor makes another power play, another attempt to have the last word. When Poirier agreed to take McGregor on in an oddly worded charity exhibition MMA sparring matchup, it was then reported that the UFC were interested in the bout. As soon as the idea of the fight taking place under the UFC banner was accepted, Conor demanded that it happen in 2020. Putting forward two dates that would require the UFC to chop and change their existing plans, Dana refused, promising a January event at the earliest. When Conor publicly accepted, he did so with the stipulation that it take place in the Cowboy Stadium in Texas. We will wait and see how these somewhat turbulent negotiations play out, but I suppose for the sake of this video, let's assume that they get the fight done. I think it's perfect for a number of reasons. I don't want to see it at 170 pounds, as both men certainly have more to do within the context of the lightweight title picture. I've been watching for years now as Dustin Poirier slowly turned himself into the fighter he is today. He's a man forged from his vast experience inside the octagon, and while he did enjoy success at 145 pounds, lightweight is obviously his optimum weight class. It's a rematch of a fight that was fought by two very different fighters, and to be honest, as much as there are no doubt characteristics of that pairing that may surface once again, we might as well be looking at a fresh matchup, all things considered. So Poirier is an absolute killer at 155 pounds, that much is understood. And I think that even with his defeat to Khabib in mind, it has been the last 2 or so years that have really seen him take on a new level of shine. Outlasting Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez, overpowering Max Holloway, biting down on the mouthpiece and going to war with Dan Hooker. That is a refined talent right there. The opponents that these two share don't really offer much in the way of insight. Indeed, McGregor absolutely dismantled Eddie Alvarez where Poirier had a bit more work to do, and both of them enjoyed a pretty dire time in there with the champion Khabib. But styles do make fights, and I think that this one truly is a pick'em in a lot of fans' eyes. Both guys are known as action fighters, and each can be counted on to bring the electricity once the fight begins, so with our fingers firmly crossed, let's hope that all parties manage to get this bout together. Because as much as I feel as though I can read between the lines with what's actually happening here, understanding that we're literally just getting a snapshot of the entire negotiational process is paramount when looking at movement like this. In the lead up to a Conor McGregor fight announcement, there is always something. Something always goes wrong, he always does something that draws in attention. I worked in MMA media during his initial ascent, in the fights with Nate Diaz, and then later in his pursuit of that dual champion status, and after a while, it became so clear how his process was centered around the idea of already having his name in your mind before the fight was announced. This time, due to the public tension between himself and Dana, it could of course be a different story, but you never do know. What I can say for sure is that Dustin Poirier deserves the opportunity to get this one back. Indeed, he has moved on to bigger and better things than an early career knockout loss at featherweight, but the Diamond is easily one of the most likable and engaging characters in the sport. Whether you're looking at the warrior who exists inside the octagon or the genuinely good and humble man who managed to fight through adversity to find himself in this position, I couldn't be happier for him if I tried. He's a great talent and one who in another era would have likely risen to undisputed champion status. But is he good enough to right the wrongs in his past and take out Conor McGregor at this point in his career? Or perhaps an even better question is Conor McGregor still good enough to get by one of the 4 best lightweights on the planet? That's the sell here. Poirier is already in the mix at 155 pounds, and sure, he might not be the most attractive booking for the champ if Khabib does in fact defend his title against Gaethje, But either way, if the Cerrone fight was the tune-up, this is the litmus test for Conor as a member of the lightweight elite in 2021. So how do I think this fight will play out if it does in fact come together as we hope it does? Well, if one thing is for sure, and trust me, there is not a lot that is concrete here, it's that Poirier is a much more durable, more technical, and more intelligent fighter these days than he was back in 2014. His chin is much stronger at lightweight, and his understanding of the slow application of a well thought out game plan is miles ahead of what it once was. He was certainly emotional in there with Conor the first time, all while being drained from cutting down to 145 pounds. Conor, on the other hand, while also being a much improved fighter from his younger self, is certainly a bit of an odd one. I do think that the result of this fight will come down to how he approaches it. If he's in shape, clear in the mind, and motivated to put in a fight camp worthy of the man he is facing, we're looking at a far more interesting battle here. Personally, I do think that McGregor should be favoured. Putting their 2014 matchup to one side, even then I see this as a favourable matchup for the former two-weight world champion. I can see Poirier struggling with those counter shots above all other things. At his peak, Conor's control of distance and his footwork are considerably better than Dustin's, and I just think that the range that this fight will likely be fought at will play directly into McGregor's hands. I'll call it a first or second round TKO knowing this man's MO, but what does matter here is how these next few days and weeks play out. If history is any indicator, there has already been more than enough of a rattle made for us to expect an official announcement soon, and boy, what a start to 2021 it will be. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. And as always, thank you for watching.